Will you pray with me and for me that the one voice that calls us home wants to express in us, through us, and as us this morning? As we enter our time of meditation centered in peace, I invite you to let any places where your body may be holding tension to soften and settle in. Feel yourself supported. Noticing how the back of your body touches where you sit. Sense your feet resting on the floor beneath you. Your hands may be resting on your body, grounding you, or open to receive. And if you're comfortable, you can let your eyes close or just let your gaze soften. Looking a little bit in front of you or letting your eyes find the flame, the light of this candle. Breathing in the deep peace of the rolling waves. The light of the stars. The ground of the earth. The flowing air. And as we enter the quiet, I invite you to bring to your heart-mind a place in nature that feels sacred to you. Maybe a place that you have visited, a tree in your own backyard, the view from your window, a place in your memory or a place of imagination. But where you sense the sacredness of nature, the sacredness of our earth. Breathing in, feel yourself rooted. Breathing out, lift your face to the sun. Breathing in, roots grow deep. Breathing out, your being expands. Breath in, rooted. Breath out, expansive. Rhythm of breath ebbs and flows like waves on the shore. Breath flows in and flows out like the wind in the trees. Peace flows in and peace flows out. Now taking a deeper breath in and out. Feeling yourself rooted, expansive. Come back gently, fully present, here in this room, at home. Sensing the gifts to be found in stillness. The gifts to be found in the strains of that dulcimer. Thank you so much, Roger. I meant to find a little picture of a shamrock to put on the screen today. And when you get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, I knew what I was going to wear. But that thought went right out of my head. But it's an interesting thing, you know, here in the States, St. Patrick's Day has seemingly very little to do with spirituality. That's a talk for another day. I'm gonna set that aside. But in those legends, St. Patrick is said to have used the shamrock to teach the Irish about the great mystery of the Trinity. Interestingly enough, in doing dive into Celtic spirituality over the last number of years, in the pre-Christian tradition in Ireland, in the Celtic world, that sacred three was already there, and it is present in many wisdom traditions around. It is not only the Trinity. And yet that shamrock has kind of become the ubiquitous symbol. Carol has a beautiful shamrock scarf on today. People have little shamrock pins. So it also, though, today is giving me the structure, this three-part structure, to hold on to my musings, that it will be one talk that I share with you, not the 3 or 4 that were in my ramblings, in my prayer life, in my reading, in my musings over the course of the last few days especially. So that inspiration for me is the voice that calls us home, but that 3-part of looking at both the voice and the call and the home. What those 3 aspects of this meant for me in my own spiritual journeying this week, and what I'd like to invite you into. So first, the voice. Whose voice do you hear? And how do you hear it? There are noisy voices in the world. Those voices that wield power over. The voices of competing products shouting, buy me, and then you'll be happy. There are voices in our own heads telling us we need to be productive. We need to get it right. We need to do it all. We had a beautiful exploration of that this Wednesday with the poem by Mary Oliver, Wild Geese. You do not need to be good. You do not need to walk on your knees for 100 miles repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. How do you hear the voices of those parts of yourself that we've pushed aside? The parts that we think aren't perfect enough or good enough for us to even look at closely ourselves, that we've kind of exiled away to the outer edges of our understanding of who we are as God within. Expressions of the divine. How does that voice of God get through to you? Maybe it is the whisper of the wind. Maybe it is the eyes of beloved pet. We have Chloe here as the perfect accompaniment to this talk. Maybe it is in the gift of singing together here. The gift of family members who come to visit when you haven't seen them in a long while. The gift of friendships that welcome you into this space and lift your spirits and your heart. Do you hear that quiet nudge of the divine voice speaking as you do the welcoming, as you do the holding and the coming in? Do you hear that one voice through your own guides? Last week we had the beautiful gift of remembering a guide who was a big part of our community here, Patricia, a woman who embodied her Dharma talk. She lived it. We sing a song here often that I've come to love, "Let My Life Be Prayer." How do we show up? Where do we find that inspiration? I do find it in my Celtic roots. St. Patrick and St. Brigid, she doesn't get as good a press as he does, although she is my favorite. And they do now celebrate St. Brigid's Day in Ireland like they do. This here? All right, I'm going to do this. All right, you stay here. Okay. Oh, thanks, Raj. I might just hold it.
Okay, well, it's here.
Well, it's here.
It's here if you want it.
We're such a good team. I hear the voice of God through Roger Mock all the time.
Nice voice.
All right. All right, there we go. Okay. So, do you hear that one voice in the bodhisattvas, in the teachers, in the saints around you? In Celtic spirituality, all of creation is the voice of God. Right, I'm going to do this, I think, because now I feel like I'm shouting at you. Does that sounds okay? Okay, maybe I'm just shouting at me. You know, I not only do I love John O'Donohue, I also love John Philip Newell. And in his book, Sacred Earth, Sacred Soul, he writes, with a reminder from John's Gospel, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." And so in Celtic spirituality, everything has come into being through the Word. Everything is essentially an utterance of the divine, a sacred sounding. Each creature and life form a unique and unrepeatable expression of the One. Now you know where I got that. I didn't make it up. He goes on to write, "In Celtic wisdom, we remember the earth as sacred. Every tree, bush, every flower and creature, every little puppy here sleeping, every hill and mountain is on fire with the divine. The life within all life is holy. What we do to the body of the earth is what we do to God." And as Jesus, the way shower, taught in the Gospel of Matthew, "For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me. What you do to the least of these children of God, you do to me. In those twin voices of all of creation, we embrace the divine essence of all beings. That is, all of creation is alive with the fire of God. And each person we encounter is alive with the fire of God. So there are the voices that we encounter. We encounter each other. We encounter all of creation. And we're invited to hear that as the voice of God calling us. How do we answer the call? All right, I'm really fumfering with this today. Another one of my favorite Celtic writers is Christine Walters Paintner, and she has a book called Earth, Our Original Monastery. And in that, she invites us to experience God, to experience the goodness of the divine in nature, to see revelation of the Word in nature. And in chapter 3, Earth as the Original Saints, we have a nod for St. Patrick's Day. And she quotes Thomas Merton from New Seeds of Contemplation. The pale flowers of the dogwood outside this window are saints. The bass and trout hiding in the deep pools of the river are canonized by their beauty and their strength. The light hidden among the hills are saints, and the sea, too, is a saint who praises God without interruption in her majestic dance. For me to be a saint means to be myself. Therefore, the problem of sanctity and salvation is in fact the problem of finding out who I am and of discovering my true self. Merton continues, trees and animals have no problem. God makes them what they are without consulting them, and they are perfectly satisfied. With us, it is different. God leaves us free to be whatever we like. We can be ourselves or not. We are at liberty to be real or to be unreal. We may be true or false. The choice is ours. The choice is ours. To hear the call, to be real, to be true, to be of loving, sacred service, to disrupt the systems of oppression in our culture and in the world and in our own hearts and lives as well. The call is the same call. Wake up. Arise. Rest in the heart of the mother, in the heart of the father, in the arms of love. Peace. Come home. Come home to your true self. It is the same call, and yet our answers to the one sainthood of the unrepeatable expressions of the divine that you are, that I am, the expressions of our full divinity and our full humanity, we each answer that call when we are true to that voice of God that we hear within. And so where is that home that we're called to? On this day that we celebrate this home, and it's 28 years that it has housed this community. On April 2nd of 2021, I closed on my first home. Those of you who've been here long enough know that about a year later, I lived not in my home for a year while the flow of water was repaired.
But a few weeks after I closed on the house, I was reading my free will horoscope by Brigid, which is one of my guides. I love his pronoia. I read it and I laughed out loud at the divine timing, and actually then copied it and saved it as a document for myself to come to when I would forget. Because it was titled Your True Home. I invite you to dream and muse about your true home, your sweet, energizing, love-strong home, the haven where you can freely be high and deep, robust and tender, flexible and rigorous, the oasis where you are the person you promised yourself you would be. To stimulate and enhance your thoughtful feelings about your true home, experiment with the following activities. Feed your roots. Cherish and foster your reliable sources of energy and inspiration. Identify all the influences that nurture you and treasure your relationship with them. Tend to your web of close allies. Take care of what takes care of you. Cultivate the arts of adoration and reverence and awe. It's an incredible privilege and blessing to have a physical home that helps me feed my roots and treasure all that nurtures me as I tend the web of close allies. In my home, I have freedom to rest, to pray, to read, to listen to music, all that is in service of my true home, the true home of my innermost being. I also have the privilege of bearing witness to stories of lives right here in our city. Without that freedom, the guests at the Focus Breakfast program, those guests who are unhoused and underhoused, those people who live in the margins of an economy that has for decades fed the wealth of a few over the basic needs of the many. I have the privilege of reading stories of families who left homes out of desperation, seeking safety and the promise of a new start. Families like my Irish peasant ancestors, families like those living and growing lives in the border towns of the Rio Grande, families settling here in Albany, coming from areas ravaged by war. I have the privilege of knowing my ancestors, though poor and frightened, when they came to these shores, they came freely. They came by choice, with hope. They did not come bound in chains and sold as chattel. We have the privilege of a spiritual home where we gather to feed our roots, where we can grow traditions, where we can cherish the gifts we each bring to this Unity family. We have a physical home here where we cultivate the courage to show up, where we cultivate the courage to be quiet enough to hear how we are called. We have a home where we cultivate welcome, where we cultivate gratitude and kindness and creativity in partnership with the Creator. We have a home where we can pause and be fed in singing, in silence, in friendship. And so today, on this day when we are all Irish at heart, in that gift of radical hospitality, of good humor, of good cheer, that is the stereotypical gift of the Irish, I invite you into a short bit of wisdom, a wee bit of wisdom, if you will, from that beautiful Irish mystic poet that Peggy shared with us this morning, John O'Donohue. I almost picked that one, but then it's like, that's a little too long for you, Brigid. You've got all those other things in there already. So thank you for being connected by spirit. So here are these simple words from John O'Donohue, and then I have a request for us. So first, To Come Home to Yourself by John O'Donohue. May all that is unforgiven in you be released. May your fears yield their deepest tranquilities. May all that is unlived in you blossom into a future graced with love. And now my request. This week, will you join me in paying attention? Will you spend time in the sacredness of the earth? Will you notice where you hear the voice of God and where you speak the voice of God? Will you join me in disrupting your own tendencies of power over and power through and find rest in the arms of God? Will you come home to yourself, to the deep beating heart of God within you? And will you find a way to share that with the least of our beloved siblings in God and with all that you encounter? May it be so, and so it is. Amen.